And it's really funny, right? Because when you first start like giving them to people and stuff, you're like, is it going to be real? Is it going to work? And then like, lo and behold, one of the mushroom strands we work with is particularly in the heart chakra, because most people, especially women, have a lot of heart chakra trauma. That's why it's the number one killer of women in America. You start fussing in your heart chakra, shut it down, and it'll kill you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Witchy Wellness Radio. Again, I'm your host, Lauren, and this is a show you learn how your body and emotions are not in the way. They are actually leading the way. And today we're talking with Megan and Nicole Michelena. They are Microdose Institute certified mental health experts specializing in psychedelic medicine. They are sisters and founders of Synchronicity, just like synchronicity, a Micrdose mentorship program that supports healing through psilocybin. Megan is also a certified holistic nutritionist, health coach, and they are both trauma-informed yoga teachers and experts in psychedelic medicine. They are precious stone jewelry makers, crystal experts, and Megan is a gifted astrologer. They have been featured in Authority Magazine, Psychedelic Spotlight, Microdose, Buzz, Best of Life Online, The Daily Beast, and together they host their own podcast, the Synchronicity Podcast. So, with all that being said, welcome to the show, Megan and Nicole.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. I'm excited to have you guys here too. And for those of you guys are watching on YouTube, I love your little mushroom behind you and some crystals too, representing behind.
Yes. Yeah, we like to have her. That's our logo. That's what we feel like when I did my ayahuasca ceremony. It's basically what my head and arms turned into. So she's kind of a representation of.
She was around before the business was around.
She was. That's actually true.
There you go. So, yeah. Well, with that little teaser, I would love to hear how you guys got into, plant medicine, psychedelics, and, how you started your own mentorship program, helping people exploring their own healing avenues.
Well, it has been an adventure, to say the least. As I say, we didn't really choose this. The mushrooms chose us. We had the call and we answered the call. And, we have this conversation quite often of just how humbled we are to have been asked to be a part of all of this healing that the world is really going through right now in humanity. What we have been given, I think, is divine and doesn't really technically belong to us. It belongs to the mass consciousness and everything. And I think that we all have a special divine calling and purpose. Our beginning into this was childhood and our own trauma and what we had to walk through, as I think everybody's, trauma is linked to their purpose, and you don't see it like that, or our culture doesn't see it like that. And when, being a yoga teacher and everything kind of knocked me into this over 10 years ago. And then when it really started to take hold was during COVID, right? There's always breadcrumbs. Like we have an old dog that's 14 that's named Rasta. And if anybody knows about Rastafarianism, I studied religion in college and they actually smoke weed to get closer to God. But I never liked drugs. So why I named her that is beyond me. So don't know. I just loved that they did that. And I was like, this is cool. So different. Anyway, so there's always breadcrumbs of like what the potential is in the field, but you don't see it until you see it. And so during COVID in 2020, I actually went out to Laguna Beach to meet with a really good girlfriend of mine for her birthday. And we went to a sound bath ceremony and I tried rape for the first time. Americans call it hape, but technically pronounced rape. And it pretty much blew the lid off of my life. I had never been into plant medicine. I was very straight edge. I was like, psychedelics and everything, you're going to end up in a psych ward, like all, whatever. That thought process was that had been programmed into the majority of us since the 70s. And I don't know what possessed me, but for whatever reason, I was like, I'm doing this. And he blew it up my left nostril. I never felt anything like that in my life. I was pretty arrogant as a yoga teacher, thinking like I knew what the chakra fields were. I knew what energy was. I had no idea. I was brought to my knees pretty quick. I'd never felt music in every cell of my body. I had never seen white light like that. It actually, like, the energy got stuck in my heart chakra because I had such a big block. and I couldn't breathe. And I was telling the shaman I was going to die. Everyone thought that was quite funny. And I'm like, I can't breathe. I'm going to die. And he's like, you're not going to die. You're going to be fine. But, I have a little bit of flair for the drama. And, went through all of that. I had a big release of energy out of my heart chakra and felt the rest of my chakras line real fast. And then he's like, I have to do the right side. It's like, the heck you do. He's like, I have to balance the energy. And we did that. And the right side was a lot better because left is death, right is rebirth. So that changed my life. And I came back and I was never the same. All of us went headfirst into plant medicine after that. We had heard whispers in the mass consciousness, which is anything you hear over 3 times from a different person, something's happening. So we were hearing microdosing. And it would, I'm an Aries. So I just went like full head on into this and pulled my Scorpio Cancer sister with me. And she thought it was a good idea too, but that's where microdosing. And then we got into ayahuasca and we went from like 0 to 100 real quick, as that song goes. But it was wild and a whirlwind. And then we had done healing for 15 plus years. And within 3 years, we had done more healing than we had done in the past 15 because of the assistance of plant medicine. And we were just like, there's something to this. In ayahuasca, weird languages were being communicated. There was mushrooms growing out of my hands. There was mushrooms going out of my head. Literally, this is a depiction of that. And again, that call came in and we stepped in full force and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it really just it's been a collection of healing for an extended period of time is really what it came all to a head, between, eating disorders and addiction in our family and therapists that, just told us that like, here's a piece of paper, write a letter, like, and it wasn't working, but it was working. We just didn't see it until we were actually able to bring it all together. And plant medicine really was what I would say the cherry on top of all of the tools that we had collected over the years.
Beautiful. I love hearing everybody's journeys. Like you said, you were called. And when you kind of have this hindsight perspective now, it's so good for all of us to hear how these breadcrumbs, just keep following that inner being or the plant medicine or whatever is guiding you, because it's all happening for us. And not all plant medicine, because microdosing is the same. And so I kind of wanted to ask, for people who don't maybe know, haven't that much experience, maybe with either, or maybe have had more of like a wild experience and are wondering what's the difference between microdosing or something like more intense like ayahuasca or what you just described, just for people who might be a little worried about
So rape is actually nicotine and it's mixed with different herbs. It goes back into Incan culture. And in some ways that's been more profound for me as a human design, as a projector, because I carry other people's energetic fields, which is why rape is so intense for me, because I'm actually purging other people's energy. It's not as bad for generators and mangens. I actually serve rape now and I've proven this theory of mine. So only really be afraid if you're a projector and you carry other people's energy. Ayahuasca is like the godmother of all of plant medicine. It's the biggest neuroplasticity shift known to man from all studies. There is not another plant medicine that touches it. That's why you do it with shamans from South America that have been working with it for thousands of years. Do not go to a white dude to take ayahuasca. I'm sorry, love you, but you have no reason to be serving something that sacred, and you're moving into dimensions. You need a shaman that knows what they're doing, because a lot of things can go down. So if you want to do ayahuasca, get in touch with us and we can send you to shamans. I don't mess with that. Macrodosing is a gram or more of mushrooms. And then microdosing is around 200 milligrams around. You can do 150, which is there's 1,000 milligrams in a gram, right? So it's quite a lot less than where you would even begin. And right, even in a gram, I could probably function pretty well. I'd be starting to see colors and things, but it wouldn't really be a full macro dose. So this is, you can drive, you can function around your children. We get a lot of fear around that stuff. It's a very small dose, and it really just helps in self-awareness and being conscious, but still being able to function so that you don't really have to like fully go into a whole experience, right? Baby steps are really nice because you can slowly start to trust the plant and build a relationship. And I'm actually really grateful that I started with microdosing because I feel like I've had such a good experience with plant medicine because I slowly built trust and was able to move into the upper dimensions and things like that in a very eased, manageable pace where I trust myself, could see myself in different levels very slowly instead of just like going for it. Now, some people go for it and, do you listen to your soul? I've got no judgment, but microdosing is really nice for most people that still need to function, but still want to have the assistance of plant medicine to help them work through their trauma or change or do whatever they're trying to do or facilitate.
Well, in microdosing, you can integrate easier. A lot of people will go, so ayahuasca is the biggest neuroplasticity shift known to man, like Megan said. So when we're working in microdosing, we're actually softening the neuroplasticity slowly over time. And that's why we work in 12-week in our program that we have. It's a 12-week mentorship around understanding the relationship of plant medicine and building that relationship with self and the plant instead of just going face deep into ayahuasca. Because if you don't have a relationship with the plant, there is a potential that you can't even cross the threshold because, you're not ready or you don't trust or, you hear of people just vomiting all night, 3 or 4 cups of ayahuasca, and they're never actually able to have an experience is because they don't have trust and they're not ready. So starting with microdosing is a very safe place and a great introduction into just plant medicine and getting comfortable with understanding even just the ego, because you get to see the ego in a very small glimpses instead of these massive like ego deaths that you hear people talk about on these really high doses of mushrooms or on ayahuasca or peyote, and it takes years for them to integrate the experience. And that can be very detrimental to people because they can slip into psychosis because they don't have the tools. This actually slowly eases you into it. You have tools, you have guidance, and it's a slow process in the brain.
Amazing. I know it's one of the collective consciousness words I hear a lot is neuroplasticity, and you guys mentioned it a few times that last time. So could you kind of explain to us like why that's so important and how that impacts our healing of actually shifting that?
Yeah. So neuroplasticity, we like to think of it, we describe it to our clients and people that come to us and they're like, I don't get this super scientific thing that's in my brain. Because it's when you get on Google, it can make your head spin because you're just like, wow, all of these words. So what we look at it as neuroplasticity is like you're driving on one road, right? Like you have 2 tires and you're creating these ruts in the road. And that's in your brain. These are things that have been programmed into you. They're kind of like your hard drive in a computer. And what happens when you insert psilocybin into them, you start to soften the groove so you can actually create a new pathway. And so when you're doing this and you're using it in small pieces, you're able to slowly change the path to which those tires are now, or that processing or that thought is going. So you're creating this in real time experience in the brain. And like I was saying earlier about ayahuasca, when it's a huge shift. So all of a sudden you're like swerving to the left. People might not be ready for that. We're just like it's a nice, like psilocybin's very gentle. It's very calm. It's a nice, just we're slightly taking a turn. And so you're able to then reprogram and get into the DMN, which is the default mode network, works in the frontal cortex of the brain. That's where the ego lives and stuff like that. So you're actually able to rewire neuroplasticity while working with the DMN simultaneously in the brain while you're microdosing.
Right. It's basically your neurons that fire together, wire together. So you have to change the wiring and how it's firing and where it's firing in order to change behavioral patterns that maybe have been there since you were born. We're actually scripted by the time we're 3 to being our parents. So you've been scripted at 3. Now, how are you going to change that scripting? And people do that with EMDR therapy, things like that. Psychedelics work very similar to that. It gets down into the PTSD. It changes your scripting because you are who you were born to be, but the scripting can get in the way of that. And that's what we're here to change. We want to change how the neurons fire and wire.
I love it. I know I can get super nerdy into like the science behind all of that too. But I just love hearing everybody's explanation of it, because it can be complicated, but it's not. It's really easy. And kind of what I heard very generalization of what you just said is like it allows you to become more of the observer or the watcher of those thoughts. So you have that, oh, I can maybe veer a little, like instead of just tunnel vision straight ahead.
Right. Right.
Well, and that's, ideally, if you think about it, we're all programmed to survive,
Yeah.
right? Like our ego is here to protect us. So ego is going to do anything and everything to make sure that we are as comfortable as possible. And when we start to insert psilocybin, we start to change those neural pathways. We start to calm the ego. We start to have a calm thought process of, okay, wait a second, maybe this is my ego. This isn't self. And you'd be able to, like you're saying, like you observe it. So you kind of get this, wow, I have choice and I can shift my thinking and I can see this in a different perspective and I can change. And it makes it for change to be easier and more comfortable. Because, it takes like 90 days to create a habit. Like a lot of people lose. I mean, New Year's resolutions, great example. By like week 3 at the gym after January 1st, there's no one there. It's because they don't have the discipline because the ego makes them comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just survival. It's how humans are made and built.
Well, the ego is to protect the body, not the soul.
Yep.
And that's where, psilocybin and stuff makes you start looking at the soul and what the soul wants and why the soul came here, and that the body's just a vessel and it doesn't need to be protected as much as you think it does. The body's quite resilient. It's the mind that's weak. And that's what we're trying to change.
Freaking mic drop on that one. It is true. I love my ego. It protects me from walking out in the middle of a highway. I understand that I don't want to get hit by a car, that kind of stuff. Great. And what else? What do we want? Who do we really want to be? Who are, like, at a soul level, what are we called to do? And integrating those both from a loving perspective is just, that's what we're here for. And in terms of different strands of psilocybin and this healing, are there different strands? I'm sure you go this in depth with every person who comes through your program, but what kind of like strands, or is there different approaches for different types of healing or people or bodies, or what they're kind of going through?
Yeah. So psilocybin's a lot like ayahuasca. So there's 7 strains of ayahuasca. And they're not strains, they're vines technically, right? And so mushrooms are the same. Just like ayahuasca, the shamans use certain vines in ceremony for certain things, depending upon what that group needs. And that's the same goes for psilocybin. And our program, particularly, we only work with 12 right now. It might be more in the future. We don't know. You never know. But they all work in different parts of the body to work different energy centers, and not necessarily energy centers, but also to help people reconnect with certain parts of their body.
Yeah, no, the mushrooms are amazing. No two are alike, even though they all have psilocybin in them, right? And to think that there can be all these strains of mushrooms and that they all don't do something different was like enlightening to me, even when we found out that there was different strands of ayahuasca. So when we started talking to shamans and really getting into the nitty-gritty of things with people that have worked with these for, long periods of time, there's chakra centers, right? And our mushrooms, and shamans have helped us figure out where and what works and what. And it's really funny, right? Because when you first start like giving them to people and stuff, you're like, is it going to be real? Is it going to work? And then like, lo and behold, one of the mushroom strands we work with is particularly in the heart chakra, because most people, especially women, have a lot of heart chakra trauma. That's why it's the #1 killer of women in America. You start fussing in your heart chakra, shut it down, and it'll kill you. So but we were even talking to a client this morning. She's like, oh my gosh, I started taking these mushrooms and I could just feel energy coming out of my heart. And I'm like, yes, break it open.
It's working.
But the mushrooms are so highly intelligent and they're so amazing. And again, we only work with 12 because even 12 are overwhelming for what they're capable of doing. And some of the newer strains, the shamans haven't worked with yet. So we work with the older strains. And we can mix and match and do all sorts of things. So if you've got like a block in your sacral chakra, which a lot of women or men for that reason that have had like sexual trauma, which is 1 in 3 people, which is astounding to me. you have a dissociation. A lot of these times, these people have money problems. They have problems holding down relationships and everything. It's a block in your sacral chakra. If you do not have energy flowing through there, you're going to have issues with meditation. You're going to have issues with money. You're going to have issues with sex and being intimate. Often these people are quite promiscuous. They don't really respect and love their bodies the way they should because that center is essentially not functioning correctly. It needs to be powered back up. So, you start doing meditation, stick some sacral chakra mushrooms in there, and it's like, boom, all of a sudden their purpose and everything's coming online. But you need to connect that into the rest of the chakras. So you'll mix mushrooms because that chakra, it's essentially been like, circumvented. Is that the right word? Where you like go around it?
Surpassed.
I don't know the right word.
Your other word was way cooler. It was way bigger.
But anyway, so it's basically been bypassed for so long. So this comes online. You've got to reintegrate the rest of the chakras with it so that they're all communicating correctly. So you can have Kundalini energy so that you're actually, your spiritual being, your auric field is functioning the way that it should so that others can recognize you as you came here to be. So it gets really wild because and it's frustrating too, because so many people are like microdosing coaches and this and that. And they're like, just throw mushrooms at it, this and that. And it's like, no, you don't even know what you're doing or what you're working in. And again, if you're using intention, okay. But the mushrooms are way smarter than you realize. And, it's the one mushroom is not the same as others is what I'm trying to say. They're not all the same. And that's why people microdose and often they don't get results or they don't this, they don't that. And if you don't have intention or the desire to change or even aware of what needs to change, you can run into really stagnant things. Nothing changes. And we have a lot of people that have actually microdosed before that end up coming to us and then they start taking our mushrooms. They're like, this is so different. Even if our mushrooms is not as strong as theirs are, because it's also something to be conscious of how the mushrooms are raised and the way that they're loved and the energy that's put into them. And the guy that raises our mushrooms is like, I swear he was a mushroom in a past life. He reminds me of a mushroom.
For sure. Yeah.
But he hangs out with the mushrooms all day and like plays them music and, like has crystals around them. It's ridiculous in like the best way possible. I'm obsessed with him. I'm
He's
like,
a mushroom
you
whisperer.
are literally like, you are a mushroom. It's like Paul Statman, right? I think he was a mushroom in a past life. That's why he's so drawn to them. Maybe we were too, but actually I was in this life in an ayahuasca ceremony. Just go take ayahuasca anyway, but it's
only if you're called to it.
Yeah. And eventually we're actually going to put out a lot more information on the different strands and stuff like that. We've been cultivating kind of like how to do that in like putting all the knowledge in our head into like a booklet or something about the different strands, because it is something that should be used. But it's also like, how do we put it out there? It's that, it's a debate that you have. It's like, how do I do this and how do I do this correctly so that it's not, give the people credit and this and that. And, like shamans don't live in the Western world. So it's like all of these things, it's like, prove this, prove that. And there's all the science behind it, even though we've seen it firsthand. And I get in my head about all of that stuff because I'm sure we'll have people being like, how do you know this?
I do want to touch on Megan mentioning Kundalini energy because I think that's like a hot word. That's so often, it's just simply when all of your energy centers and energy is flowing through your body. You don't have any blocks. It's just moving fluidly through the spine, through the front, like through the top of your head, down through the front of your body, because so often we have blocks and we have like stuck energy, especially in like shoulders and throats. A lot of people are like, oh, I have all this neck pain or shoulder pain or hip pain. A lot of times it's actually stuck energy and they don't have full Kundalini. And Kundalini is just a really fancy word for all of your energy circuits being online and working together.
That's fair. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. We talk about Kundalini a lot here, and it's, just your energy centers, just your life force that is you. And I know my healing journey, I always thought like I'd visualize like a dam or like this block, like how am I going to push through it? And really, sometimes it is like I'll have a release and it is a push through, But a lot of times it's just that surrender and that sweet, just letting go. And it sounds like that kind of sweetness and love and intentionality is kind of what these mushrooms are all about. And I love what you said about the guy who raises the mushrooms for you, because I was going to ask about like the intention behind it. Do you speak to your, when you microdose, do you kind of like talk and like, because I love talking to my water, I love talking to my food, my plants, because it's all energy, right?
Do you want to hear a crazy story? Okay.
Yes, please.
So our 14-year-old dog,
Oh,
okay,
yeah, here we go. This is
was like
great.
3 months ago on her deathbed because she's got arthritis in her hip. She's lived a great life, but man, she was athletic and she used those hips.
She's got bone cancer.
Yeah, she's probably got bone cancer. She's got all sorts of stuff, but we don't really believe in like jabbing our dog with a bunch of needles and trying to figure out why she's dying. Like she's 14, she's had a good life. So anyway, we put her on, gabapentin and all the stuff that the vet did, and she was going downhill really fast. And then we kind of had this meditation one day and we're sitting down. It's like, are we going to put her out of pain? What are we going to do? And then, we had a friend on the phone with us and she's like, have you thought about giving her mushrooms? And I was like, how the hell did we not think of that? Anyway, so we take her off of Western medicine and start dosing our dog with mushrooms. Lo and behold, she turns into like a year younger of self. Again, she's not like a puppy, like I'm a new dog, but she's like, I'm going for a walk. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Here I am.
Eating food
I'm going to
again.
play. I'm going to run down the back steps. And we're like, what in the heck is happening? Because if you Google this online, it says it'll kill your dog. She's been on them for almost 4 months now. She's doing a great time. And
She's not dead.
why I'm telling you this story is because when we give her a dose and we don't put intention into it, she'll be panting and in a lot of pain. But if we tell the mushrooms, please take her out of pain and help her, boom, she's fine. And she's like happy. She's kind of staring at the sky a little bit sometimes of like, wow, it's so pretty. But my whole point is you have to put intention into something. And I've tried it with her and seen it in a non-human in a very, every time, if I don't, or one of us don't put an intention into it, she's in pain. If we put an intention to it, she's like a 12-year-old dog again. It's wild and she's playful and she's happy. But these things are so powerful. And I think they're going to replace so much in Western medicine. We haven't even began to look at this. But I couldn't believe we could give it to our dog. I was like, this proves everything we've been saying. This is so crazy. And again, her name is Rasta. She's the beginning of all of this. And I love that she's going to go out on mushrooms, guys. Like, this is so funny. I look at her sometimes, I'm like, you are a divine being. You came here to teach us so much. And I can't, it's so fitting. Everything comes full circle.
Well,
so dogs on mushrooms.
Yeah, dogs on mushrooms. It's also, you mentioned your intention with food and water, it's so important. And there's a great book. It's called Savor. I honestly cannot remember the doctor who wrote it, but he talks about the intention of food and putting whatever you put in your body, you have intention around it. And even if it's sugar and it's horrible for you, and if you have the like mindset and intention, like this is gonna make me fat, this is gonna make me feel bad, this blah, 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 like whatever dialogue it is, it actually takes on that energy into your body. And it was really fascinating. We were actually having this discussion last night at the dinner table. I'm taking an advanced yoga training, and we were in an advanced anatomy class yesterday, and the guy was talking about fascia. And since 2015, they've really been digging deep into what fascia is, and they're actually finding that it's actually an organ in our body. They're deeming it now, like all of these people, like just surgeons and everything, would cut through it, and they like didn't really think anything of it. Well, it's pretty much, they're proving in the science world right now, in kinesiology, and all of these surgeons are proving that it's actually like the knowledge of all of these cells talking to each other in our body. That's how everything in our body communicates, is through our fascia. So I was telling Megan about this because I'm like such an anatomy nerd, and I was like super excited. And she was like, oh my God, it's like mycelium. And I was like, holy shit, it's like mycelium. And so, yes, it was like, so I was like so excited because I was like, the mushrooms are so intellectual. And like when you grow them in the mycelium and the process of it, like to think that like not putting an intention into it, or to think that they're not listening, is actually just naive and so ego driven human mind, because intention is so important and energy is so important, and it's around us. We just go outside and look and there's energy, and but everything is so connected, even the human body with the fascia and the mycelium, and even like trees and how their roots talk to each other, and like everything is so interconnected, that food and water and anything is energy, and it's all in how we approach it and how we look at it is really how the body takes it.
Oh my gosh, I'm nerding out about the fascia thing. I haven't heard that yet. Oh my gosh. And of course the mushrooms. If people are mushroom nerds, can you shortly, briefly explain what the mycelium is and how that, if people don't understand
Yes.
that?
Yeah. Okay. So mycelium is really, if you think of like a basic tree, right? So trees have roots, mushrooms have mycelium. So mushrooms they're so fascinating. Like, oh my gosh, you can like go on YouTube and Google and like go down the rabbit hole of mushrooms. But I'm just going to speak to just kind of the lifespan of how they work. So a mushroom comes up out of the ground, it opens up, and it has this like little skin around the rim of, it would be like right around here if you guys can see. And what happens is that at a certain point, it breaks open and all the spores fall. And so spores, now some mushrooms, they're really hard to get the spores. Others are really easy to get the spores. So in the world of mycology, you actually can take a spore print of those that drop them. You cut the top off, you put it on a foil, like what, 24 hours, and you can get the spores. So then the spores are what cultivate the mycelium. That is like all the DNA, all of everything that is going to be created come from the spores. And so you can cultivate them. And a really new thing right now is liquid cultures. Everyone is like so pumped on putting it in water. It lasts about 21 days. If anyone has made kombucha or sourdough bread, it's like creating like a mother. And then you take that and you can put it into dirt, and there's a whole cultivation of different sterile, I'm thinking of the word, it's not dirt, well, it is dirt, it's substrate, yes, that's the word. And from there it literally almost creates this neural network of mycelium.
It looks like a brain.
It literally looks like a brain. Yeah, exactly. And it's all the DNA. It's everything that creates a mushroom. And then it gets to a certain point in the substrate where it can't expand anymore. And then from there, it starts to pin. And from there, mushrooms are regrown. And so it's this whole circle of life, especially if you guys have watched Fantastic Fungi. They show really great clips in nature. And Paul Statman has so many beautiful clips, even on his Instagram, of the life cycle of a mushroom in nature. And it is all about the spores dropping and even to like the leaves falling on the ground in really moist areas to refertilize for the next round of mushrooms. And so the mycelium is the neural network that creates mushrooms.
Yep.
Thank you. That was very, I loved hearing. I figured you guys would be way better explaining that if I attempted. But I love like talking about the intentionality, because how you guys approach this plant medicine, it's more than, it's the intention of taking the plant medicine, the microdosing, and the awareness of what do I want to change? How am I going to? And when I say combining the 3D with the 5D, like the energetics,
Yes.
but also like I'm going to change who I am, so I've got to show up differently too. That's what I found in my life, really where things really transform. I'd love to hear what you guys' perspective, kind of combining that. We've touched on it, but like really combining like the plant medicine and the healing is because we change. We're different people.
Right. We're big on changing from what we call hedonistic tendencies, which are very 3D. It's essentially hedonism believes that this is heaven. Like, we're in heaven right now. This is my material plane. I better get whatever I'm going to get. And like, it's this battleground of ridiculousness. Most people are in hedonistic tendencies. I have met very few that are in rational stoic behavioral patterns. And rational stoic behavioral patterns believe that this is the learning ground. We are souls having a human experience and we are here to learn. That's a stoic being that's had a spiritual awakening that thinks rationally about life and makes decisions rationally. That means they don't play games. So many people play games. You know, those people that are like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't do that. But like this phrase, like so many people are in that, especially women. I meet them all the time. Or they've got what we call a masculine shield because we work a lot in the masculine and feminine because you cannot have a spiritual awakening if your masculine and feminine is not balanced. And as women, we have yang bodies and yin souls. As a man, you have a yang body and a yin soul. The goal is to connect one to the other. And most of us have a severed cord or like a kinked cord or things like that. That's what trauma is. It's kinking the cord to your higher self. We're here to reconnect that. We have a 12-week program that reconnects you. It's essentially the stepping stones into the 5D, because with our nervous systems and what we're doing right now, we can't step over there because we're too in chaos. And, you know, we're turning chaos into disciplined decision. A functional, rational person is I will or I won't. End of story. There's none of this like, oh my God, does he like me? Does he not like me? Am I going to do this? Am I not going to do that? It's like okay, my brain and my heart are connected. I act. I don't react. What do I feel? I'm having a feeling, connecting to my brain, then I'm acting. I'm not having a feeling, reacting, and then thinking later, which is hedonistic tendencies. And it's just wild because the human population has been so traumatized that we're in survival, we're in hedonism. Again, it's that ego of like trying to survive here, and we can't even step into the other plane. So what we've done is ask the mushrooms to create a 12-week program of like, how do we get people where they need to be? Because I was one of these people. I am not talking any kind of, excuse my language, but shit, because I was a hedonistic troll at one point in my life. And, you know, it was like getting smashed in the face of like, hey, wake up. Like, this is not about you. And, you know, there's a mass consciousness. There's all of these things. The mushrooms represent that mass consciousness. How do we get people to wake up and it not be the, you know, trash can ride that it was for us, right? So
Flaming dumpster.
it was a lot. So we've created this like stepping into soul, stepping into purpose. And again, it was divinely like placed. I don't even know how it happened. Ask me, I cannot answer. We just kind of
We've tried to figure it
took
out.
our lives, placed it all together of how the heck did we get here and who are the people that we see that we want to be like, how do they act and what do they do? And how do we replicate this so that we can help move the population forward? Because the hate and stuff that goes on in society right now, with the masculine especially, is hard for me to watch. And I refuse to continue to watch men fall and women let them. And it is time for the divine feminine to rise and to call into action, because the women challenge the masculine. Make no mistake, it is the feminine that will rise first and the masculine that rises to the challenge. It's the way it's been. It's the patterning in our society and our culture. That's why we should be called gynosapiens, not homo sapiens. Women evolved first. Men rose to the challenge. Women, it is time to come back to self, to wholeness, to the power of femininity, to stop trying to be men. We are trying to be men. Nobody wants to be a man. Like, I appreciate what men can do. I do not want to do what they do. I can do what they do, but I don't want to. No desire. Like, oh, yay, you're going to fix my car. Yay, I love this. Please fix things or do whatever you want to do. And again, this is not saying that, you know, you can't be a woman that is a masculine energy, or you can't be gay or any of these things. It's about embodying both and choosing and being aware of that energy and being aware of what you're stepping forward. And it's awareness, it's self-awareness of who do I want to be? What do I want to represent? Who am I stepping forward as in my life, in this world, and being a positive force, a divine force, instead of this chaotic, hedonistic ridiculousness of not even being aware of how you're affecting other people or where you're throwing your energy or how you're throwing your energy. And I can't even begin to explain how we put everything together that we did, but every time I see somebody walk through it and the changes that I see in them and how much more connected they are to their soul is just like, this needs to be everybody. I don't care how it happens. And I just like, that's why we want to eventually start making coaches and just getting all, because it's not ours. The thing is, okay, it came through us and it's like this birth, but how do we get this into more people faster? Because humans aren't waking up fast enough. That's what I'm afraid of. It's like there's this huge awakening, but it needs to happen faster. So it's like, come on, come on. Of course, I'm an Aries. That might totally be my own perspective, and I'm very aware of that. But I just want everyone to feel better and do better is my thing. So I think that's also why I'm like, nobody needs to suffering. Suffering is a choice. And when I realized suffering was a choice, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. That's when I was like, ding, 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 time. Like, it's time for everybody to feel this way because there's so much suffering in the world. That's why suicide is the number one killer right now.
Well, and the thing is like we call it like somatic realignment, androgynous somatic realignment, because right now in society, everyone is on this like you have to be one or the other. And that's not true at all. And like this is base root in psychology. Like we know there's the yin and the yang, and that everybody embodies it in its soul and physical form. And really it's teaching people to embody themselves. Like there are so many people that come to us and we're like, what's like mainly our first week, we're like, hey, what's your purpose? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? And they're like, we don't know. I'm like, great. Actually, that's a great starting point because our next 12 weeks is going to be to give you all of these tools. By the time that we're done with this, you should know what your purpose is, because guess what? You know what your soul looks like. Now, not saying that this 12 weeks is going to heal you. It doesn't. It's a journey into a toolbox of a lot of different tools, stem from Eastern culture, Western culture, modern psychology, old psychology. It literally takes a lot of different tools, puts it into one so that you can see yourself. And we are just ideally like surrogates in that, like, here's what you weren't given, but we don't want to be your therapist. Like after these 12 weeks, we don't want you to need us. I don't want to be your therapist. That is not, I didn't go into therapy for a reason. But so often, especially in Western medicine, you know, we talk to people all the time. They've been sitting on their therapist's couch for 10 years. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of it. I sat on a therapist's couch for a lot of years and I didn't get any answers. And yet I took those tools that was once given to us, and Megan and I have been able to break them down to actually like what they were rooted in and giving them all of the tools instead of only giving them 25% of the tools that the therapist was giving you, because they can bill your insurance and they can see you every week. So they're a paycheck. And we have taken that stigma away by helping people take back their power.
Well, I think it's nice to have somebody to talk to that's neutral. I think that therapy does have a place, but I think it's looking outside of yourself when the answers are all within. And you when you start to look within for all the answers and not outside of you. I mean, most religions teach you to look outside of yourself. Your parents taught you to do this because I say so. That's tyranny. You are in a dictatorship in a family. You do not give children a voice, and then you expect them to go out into the world and have a voice, function. No, you're teaching them to look outside of themselves for authority. What you should teach a child is price or prize. Hey, do this because there's a price and a prize. Now you are strong enough by 8 for women and by 11 for boys to make a choice within you. I will guide you, but I am not the tyrant and the dictator. You are guides as parents. You're not a dictator. You know, and we wonder why peer pressure is such a thing, or why we have children shooting up places. That's why when you create a tyranny or a dictatorship in a family, especially in men are programmed to give, protect, and cherish, but they are also leaders, or should be taught to be leaders. And if you have a parent that shoves them down and shoves them down and shoves them down, It's kill or be killed. They'll go into psychosis and it's kill or be killed. Their parent are literally creating a space where a child's soul cannot actually perform or be present. That's where you get literally demon children. And psychologists know this. There's been studies on this. This is Eric Berne. He was one of Sigmund Freud's prodigies. He talks about this. And if modern day psychology would have followed Carl Jung or Eric Berne instead of Sigmund Freud, we would be in a lot different of a situation, because parenting wouldn't be do it because I say so. That's how I was raised. And then I wondered why, like, oh my gosh, authority, authority, instead of being like, no, I have a voice and I can make my own choice. So it's teaching children to go within and to be their own compass and not to look outside, because we're so programmed to. It's crazy, especially as women. It's like, when did we stop trusting our nervous systems, which is instinct is feminine? We don't have to have a reason why we say no. It just doesn't feel good. That's feminine. You start getting into your head and into intuition, that's masculine. Get out of your head. If your body doesn't feel good, if your body doesn't like him, if your body doesn't like going to wherever you're going, go sit in a bubble bath. Listen to your body. But our nervous systems, we were taught to think, not feel, right? If you were raised in a parental, it's like, what did you accomplish? What did you do? What grade did you get? That's being raised as a little boy. It's not like, oh, you accomplished something. How do you feel about that? That's feminine. We were all raised as little boys, so we all have masculine shields. And then we wonder why 75% of people are divorced and why the masculine is failing. We don't need them. Everybody needs to be needed, right? Inherently, they need us because we have wombs and they don't. But, again, it's making space for everybody, and it's being consciously aware of what it's done to a woman's nervous system to do it all. I mean, there's so many burnt out women. There's so many burnt out moms that come to us that are single moms. And there's like, da, 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 da. My ex is a dick. He's blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, time out, breathe. What's going on? And lo and behold, she's in both energies, freaking out, trying to work, trying to do this. Da, da, da. And it's like, okay, I get that chaos. We had a single mom. I understand men that don't show up, this and that. But how do we inspire the masculine to start showing back up? Because society cannot exist without strong masculine. Women naturally look to masculine. And if masculine's not in the home, she's looking for it in the government or other places. And this is why we get into situations that are really, really jacked up, right? Or if a single mom is like out working all the time, the kids are going to look for strong masculine. That's where you get into gangs and things like that. There's alphas in every society. It's 10% of the population into the bad, and there's 10% of the population in the good. Who they follow depends on who their parents are and who their parents are allowing around them and all sorts of stuff. But it's just wild what we have let our society collapse into. And I believe that the future is the patriarchy and the matriarchy standing side by side and finding strength in one another instead of competing. Competition is masculine energy. Collaboration is feminine energy. It's time to step back into, we're both here. Nature even has masculine and feminine. Everything works together. It's part of the unity. It's part of how the universe works. And, it's just, it's been hard to wake up and to see, because I for one used to be a man hater, and now I'm like, oh gosh, I got so programmed by society to think that masculine is bad, when actually it's really, it's a beautiful thing in its divinity. It can be quite toxic, but I've seen more toxic masculinity in females than I have in men, which is wild. And we've worked with a lot of them, and they come back out. And we had one, she ended up getting pregnant. She couldn't get pregnant. And then she dropped into her feminine, and she's like, guys, I got pregnant. And I'm like, yeah, your masculine shield went down. You let your husband be a man, and look what happened. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to be it all. Doesn't mean you're not strong. Actually, knowing when to surrender and when to let go is strength. Trying to do it all is weakness. You're in unworthiness. You're not conscious. So, yeah, she's pregnant now, and she's microdosing, which I freaking love. Yay! We just did a podcast on that.
That's so
microdosing
awesome.
pregnant. So
We really, yeah. I mean, it's
I could talk
at
about
the end
everything.
of it. It's really just teaching people and guiding them to embody and understand what their soul came here to do. And like, whether you're a feminine core or masculine core, like it doesn't matter. You can you can be a female body with a masculine core, and you can be a masculine body with a feminine core, and we really just help people see themselves and use tools to be able to continue the journey even afterwards. And all the things Meg touched on, she can like, it's so funny when she like tangents because she gets so passionate because she's such an Aries. I'm like over here, I'm like, okay, where are we gonna? Yep, she landed the plane, killed it.
Sometimes.
Oh, I love it. And I love to experience the passion and, just the channeling of just
Mhm.
the and so thank you for that. Thank you, both of you guys. Yeah, we have many podcasts. We talk about that topic of, divine feminine, masculine, healing the witch wound, and a lot of us too, since it's witchy wellness, which relates to a lot of that too.
Oh yeah.
So very on topic. I'm sure all the listeners can relate to every single thing you said right there. So thank you for bringing it up. And thank you guys for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure to have you on. Was there anything else you wanted to briefly talk about before we wrap the show up at all?
I mean, I just we say, like, if you're gonna explore plant medicine, or if you've been called to it, like, just do the research behind it. There's a lot of people out there that I don't want to say don't know what they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. Like Megan mentioned earlier, the white guy in Portland who, like, just went down to Peru for a week and got some ayahuasca vine and now is like serving it to his friend. It's probably not going to be your best option. And, we're seeing a lot of microdosing coaches pop up, just like do your research. Everybody is different. Our program is very structured. We really help people do some really pretty intense, deep work, but we also know we're not for everybody. And so sometimes there's microdosing coaches out there. I know we personally have worked with and have been in contact with people, they work just specifically with vets or people that have had like trauma in regards to certain things, sexual trauma, and that's all they focus on. So it's like what you're looking for, but like do the research and really just listen to yourself, because your soul will tell you and guide you. And at the end of the day, that's what plant medicine is all about, is listening to your soul and being willing to step into it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for coming on. And we end the show the same way every episode. How may we, as the listeners, a huge act of gratitude, be of service for the both of you today?
So I would first say, work in intention. Anytime you eat, drink, go outside, just set an intention and see what happens. And then, of course, follow us. We have synchronicity_sisters at Instagram, and we also have our own podcast. So if you guys want to head over there, give us a listen or give us a follow. We always love connecting with new people. We run our own social media, so DM us if anything resonated with you or if you want to connect with us. We're open to connecting.
Yeah. Go give our podcast a listen would be mine. It's so hard to I love doing people favors, but then when it's like, oh my gosh, what can somebody do for me? I get like all weird about it, which is something I need
being your feminine.
I need to work on.
Receiving.
Receiving. I'm like, what? Receive, huh? Listen to our podcast and let it expand you. Ours is all about stories in season 2, and there's some wild stories. So that's a mutually beneficial thing of it's gonna, if you're kind of curious about doing psychedelics and you're like concerned or, oh my gosh, how's this going to affect me or this and that, or just how it can expand you. Or if you're a woman, like listening to the podcast that we did with Moms on Mushrooms about,
Tracy T.
It's just join the party. I'm sure you already do because you listen to this, but join the party, start the movement. This is the way of the future. And however you get on board, just get on board, and it's of service to us because this freight train's coming. Saturn just went into Pisces. Pisces rules psychedelics. This will be the fall of Western medicine and the rise of psychedelics. And as an astrologer, I started this company and didn't even see that coming. And then had that epiphany literally in January. I was like, oh my gosh, we're so in sync with the universe. It was hilarious. But however you want to get involved, just get involved. Start asking your therapists and your doctors. Put it in the mass consciousness. Push it into the mass consciousness. Start questioning your friends. Start questioning your parents. start pushing this new way of being and the awakening that's happening. Any way you can be a part of it would be in service to us and to everybody, because it's time to let the human race not suffer as much as we have been. Start to move into the frequency of love that we were all born to be in.
Well, we're in the era of community and collaboration, not individuality.
Beautiful. Thank you both, Megan and Nicole, for coming on here today. It was such a pleasure and honor to hear your passion and your souls just shine today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to listen to this episode when
it's
it
been
comes
great.
out.